I remember I carried my dad down the beach when I finished up at the Chopra Center to be a yoga teacher. And he was having problems with his knees. He couldn't make it down. It was a long walk to go around the cliff that we were at. It wasn't really a cliff. It was just a rocky crevice where he had to essentially glide down. And his knees were bad. It was a long walk, so I said, you know what? Let me just carry you. Worst case scenario, I'll just fall on my butt and we'll just slide down together and we'll get dirty together. It was probably about 18 feet to the deck of the beach at where everybody else was, all my other yoga teacher, trainer classmates. So I took a chance. I think I was in pretty good health and I was very spiritually energized, and we made it. And then he was able to participate, and it was fantastic. A lot of my friends from around the world still remember him. It's almost like what I'm going through now. I know I was, because of my father and my mom, I was born to be a healer. I always wanted to be an athlete, and mom always pushed me to be a doctor, and I appreciate that. I understand the value of that. Why is it that Asian parents always want their kids to be doctors? I don't understand that. But if in following that dream that I thought was pre-programmed, because I wanted to be an athlete and coach and be a star, track and field, maybe a little football, martial arts. But being a doctor, certainly it was a big fork in the road because of all the studying you had to do. I mean, I calculated I'm in my 26th year of school and I'm still paying for it, but it's worth it. I mean, if I can heal myself in a good way and pass that knowledge base to my patients, then the world is a better place. So when the remedy, which would be a tax on me, is worse than the disease, which is suffering in the patient that comes to see me, then it's not worth it anymore, because risk versus benefits, I will succumb to burnout, disease, poor sleep, broken family, low self-esteem, I'll probably get a fibromyalgia flare-up and an irritable bowel syndrome flare-up from overspending my time and being frustrated, but presenting to my patients a plan and a design specifically for them. I mean, not to be selfish, but I have to design something for me too. And it's hard for me to turn the camera around, although I can speak into this camera, but it's hard for me to, so to speak, turn the camera around and design a way out for myself. And unfortunately, I don't trust my colleagues as far as taking care of me. I trust them as far as taking care of medical flare-ups. But as far as lifestyle, no. We weren't taught that in medical school. We weren't taught about nutrition. I had to learn that by myself, going to fellowship, paying out of my pocket, experimenting on my own, reading all the time. And I think it's an investment, but it's kind of a hobby. It's a fun hobby. But now, again, the question is the hobby killing me? And I think it is getting to the tipping point. So that's why I have to figure out, I took these 2 weeks to figure stuff out, and I thought I'd be enlightened. I'm now into my first week of sabbatical. I thought I'd be enlightened just by disconnecting. I tell you, it's so liberating not to feel the urge to answer. Well, sorry if you sent me a message, but Dr. Richards is covering for me, so I'm just going to trust that he's taking care of everything. But it's such a relief not to have to answer those, not to have to open up that little portal in my computer to see all the questions that have been sent over by patients. I apologize if you sent me some questions and I didn't answer, but I'm on sabbatical to find myself. So I have to, I think I told you in one of my previous My Quantum Shift episodes that I have to have a clear-cut definition of this is work. I've put in my 50 to plus hours per week, and now it's time for me to spend the other part of the week, what's left of it, with my son, my wife, my daughter from a distance, and myself. So the problem is when everything kind of comes together, which you would think doctors should be able to live their lives properly, cut the grass, take care of a leaking faucet, take care of a sick kid, and work. but it's hard. At least for me, it's hard at this point in time. And I don't know why it's hard now. Maybe it's because medical reimbursement keeps on getting smaller and smaller and smaller every year. I think that a big organization will survive the decreased reimbursement. I keep on saying $49.95 paid out once to twice a year, maybe. And that just is not a business model. In fact, my CEOs would say that is the wrong direction. And yet we accept that as being normal in medicine. We accept decreased reimbursement. The decrease in reimbursement equals the increase in inflation. In fact, the increase in inflation is about 3% per year. The decrease in reimbursement is like 5 to 10% per year, lower and lower. So, or it's getting harder and harder to get things approved. So I will just write everything as far as I think is necessary. Even if patients come in and say, I want the weirdest tests available, I'll have to come up with an argument for why. But if I can find a good argument for why, and I think it would be worth it if I would want it, I'd get it. As long as patients know that I can't be responsible for if it doesn't pay out and you have to pay out of your pocket. But I think that all those metrics that we order in the office, me and my partner, not my partner, but my patients, because we're partners, I think we can work as a team to figure things out, come up with metrics, come up with a map, come up with direction, come up with goals. And if we can make the goals, if we can understand what the big goal is and then make it bite-sized so it's easier to attain and there's success, I think that'll be a good plan. That's the way I would want it played out. Instead of just waiting till the nastiest presentation and magnificent multitude of symptoms all deep in their symptomatology, where it's just impossible to get out of the pit. I think that if we have a whole bunch of little pits, it's a little easier, but you still have to get out of the pit, whether it's a big deep one or a whole bunch of small ones. That is the wrong direction. What we have to do is be able to serve our families, be able to serve ourselves, our loved ones, immediate families, and have a reason for existence. That's how the Blue Zones do it, and I think this need for being appreciated and belonging to something of a challenge and a job is important. But again, if we all succumb to a whole bunch of tiny pits and we get nowhere, we didn't achieve anything. So the idea is to call it a day and kind of rethink. So as I was alluding to, this is my first week, and I'm thinking, where's the answer? And I'm waiting for the answer, but I think what keeps on popping up in my head is, I feel good. I feel good not having to emphatically dive into a computer system that will be never ending. I know there's always going to be a message I can't get to as I get to the second hour of working this computer portal. And some days are not so bad. It's like, ooh, I did an hour of work, I'm cool. Most days are not like that though. So having just being and existing in this sabbatical, I guess you could call it, where I give myself an excuse that Dr. David Richards is going to cover for me and he's going to do everything. I just have to trust that he does a good job, which he does. But I'll also have to refrain from hitting the keys early in the morning or late at night, which is not healthy. I tell all you guys, don't look at a computer screen 2 hours before sleep, and don't be opening your phone first thing in the morning. So I practice what I preach. It is tempting, but I've gotten over that, and I don't like doing it. And I have a ritual, which I've talked about before. But I think that what I'm ultimately finding is that the answer is I have to really expand on that time that I'm not working to live as Rick Saguil would live. Because at this point in time, my son will be graduating high school, and then once he graduates high school in 2 years, I'll be probably going for my PhD because I'll have nothing else to do. Or my wife and I will start traveling. So God forbid one of us gets sick. That wouldn't be a good way to become empty nesters, which is what I'm seeing with a lot of patients. They become empty nesters. It's like taking the first step into space. It's suddenly like, where am I going? What's this line? There's a tether here that goes to my spaceship, but that's it. So I'll see it when people freak out on a rock climbing wall, when they only have this 1-inch rope that holds their entire body weight to this little hold that somebody's holding from way up above that you don't see. And you have to sit there dangling, thinking, I could fall, but I'm not falling, and I'm being held by this harness, this carabiner, and this little tiny rope. So it takes a lot of trust, which is hard, but usually you get over that psychosis that can happen when you first become an empty nester, and then you can find yourself. But I think it's hard when you haven't had a trajectory at all. I think mine is to be a healer and an athlete. At least that keeps on resonating with me, and I can do that in several different ideas. My mom would have wanted me to be a doctor, and I am a doctor, obviously, but I'm going to probably compromise and say I'm going to start to be an athlete. So the doctor part I got down, and I think it's wearing on me. The Rick Saguil athlete part, which I can still serve as being an example and a guide as far as a lifestyle coach, that part will be the beauty of my second half of life. So I guess I just declared it. I'm seeing that in this time off, there's no trumpets playing, there's no angels coming down in my dreams at night. I think it's just me realizing that those Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, actually technically it's Saturday, Sunday, and half of Friday, those 2.5 days of the week that I'm supposed to take off, if I can just learn to expand what I do in those 2.5 days and kind of sprinkle it in to the other 5 days, then that will make everything balanced. Because what I was doing was taking the 5 days, 4 days, but 12 to 14 hour days, and having that spill over into my regular life. And so I was really encompassed. I was really just consumed by being a doctor and being stuck on a computer, which I don't think we should do. I think there's times to cut it off. The old neighborhood doctor would still be able to turn the light off, kiss his wife goodnight, kiss the kids goodnight, and go to sleep. If there was a knock on the door at night, then that's fine, but I mean, most people would realize that you have to give doc the time and the respect. But now I think there's not a backlash, but there's a devaluation of the doctor, because most people have a terrible experience with going to a doctor. It's either anxiety causing, or it's a scolding because you're gaining too much weight, your cholesterol is too high, you're not losing anything from last year. So I think that connotates a bad experience. But by the same token, if you don't know about how to manipulate nutrition, bring on design spirituality practice, design an exercise routine, embellish good sleep and refreshing sleep. If you don't know how to do that, and all you know how to do is prescription medicines, then you're kind of really at a dead end. I mean, there's a lot of great value with prescription medicines, but at the 30,000 foot view, you really haven't done anything to reverse the disease. You've held the disease in place for a short time, but if you don't take care of the root cause of getting to that disease, then life will find a way. As Jeff Goldblum said, life will find a way outside your blocks of medicine, and it'll continue to express itself in the worst possible way. Which is why I think that when I learn to figure out who is sitting across the table from me and see how would I develop this with the easiest steps and the biggest bang for the buck to get to a summit of some sort. It's a challenge, it's fun. It's also really rewarding when I see people just take off. And I will see that in about 5 to 10% of the patients I see. You just check out my summit boards. I'm very proud of my warriors, and they're inspiring me to do what I'm doing right now, which is take care of myself. So it all goes back to you guys. Even if you're not my patients, you're just a subscriber, you're also contributing too. Whether you give a thumbs up or whether you give a thumbs down, you're still contributing. And it's shaping the way other people see you as a commenter. It's shaping the way I put out my educational videos, shaping the way I reflect on what am I supposed to be doing with these videos, with the office, with exercise. Why even bother with 15 minutes 3 days a week? Why should I be a vegan? Everybody else quit. Why don't I quit? Why can't I have a beer? I want to stay up late and watch Netflix. Why can't I do that instead of go hiking in the morning or hitting steps and causing pain for a couple days? So all these questions, they fly by, And I'm sure they're flying by you too. But I think what I can architecturally say is that if we have the strong foundation that we can ask those questions and we can formulate those questions, I think we're already ahead of the game. So when it gets to the point where you can't even think about questions and you're just kind of sitting and waiting for the suffering, then the morale is lost and then we're broken. So much harder to reverse where that car is going. But there's still possibilities, but if it's that severe, then you are going into the gauntlet of Western medicine. And you might fare, but when you stabilize and start to show an inch of reversal of suffering, then you come to see me and I can put my Western hat on and my Eastern or alternative and complementary hat on. And I'll find the way out. But just the bottom line is, don't let it get that bad. I hope that the path is going to be obvious to you and the summit will be obvious. It's not just going to Colorado, it's a bigger summit than that, but just stay safe and take the time, the 2.5 days or whatever it is, take the 2.5 days to rejoice, rebuild, rest, and revel in happiness. Because I've ultimately grown the 50 hours a week part extensively. And I've let that spill over into my 2.5 days a week. Now I'm going to take those 2.5 days a week because I am just letting go of, sorry patients, but I'm letting go of the 50 hours a week in the weekday. And I'm going to grow the 2.5 days a week and let that spill over into how I care for my patients and my subscribers. So hopefully you'll be patient as I'm going through the journey, but ultimately, if you are burned out, then you take my cues and try to expand that the part of life that we neglect. And I think that eventually, just like having overeating or eating late at night or having too much beer, you know you're going to pay for it. So pay it forward and think ahead before you even indulge in that, because it'll be hard to, if you work on the idea beforehand, I think it'll be much easier than being guilty and working on the side effects afterward. So I guess I'll end at that. But